Hi there, my name is Professor Graham Currie. I'm the Professor of Public Transport at Monash University, Australia. I'm here to talk to you about a presentation I'm making in Paris at the OECD Roundtable. It's about managing incumbent advantage, lessons learned and good practices. Firstly, a few things about me. I'm a public transport specialist, not a regulatory economist. I really take the regulatory issues associated with public sector involvement in the industry from the public transport operator and provider point of view. My background is I've got 37 years in public transport, mostly planning as well as research. I used to work in industry. I was at London Buses when they were privatised in the 80s. So I've had experience of both imposing regulations as a consultant around the world and also from the operator's point of view. In 2003, I was awarded the first professorship in the field in public transport in Australia. So I've been involved in both reviewing regulations and the performance of different competitive systems since then. I'm funded by industry, so more industry focused than I am academically. And also the group I run, the Public Transport Research Group, have done a number of studies in this field around the world. Importantly, I'm part of the Threadbow series of conferences. This is the international conference on competition and ownership in land passenger transport, which really since the 1980s has been involved in understanding good practices, reviewing them and so forth. And on the screen there you can see a few of the papers I've written fairly recently for the International Transport Forum of the OECD. I was part of the Public Transport Marketing Organisation and Innovation Working Group about how we look at introducing competitive influences into the public transport sector. The OECD asked me to consider the following. There's normally a very big incumbent involved when you bring private sector involvement into public transportation in cities. Should this provider be instructed? Were the question restructured? Was the question I was asked. Such as in London, we had London Buses. I was working there, the major operator. Should we tender those out? Should we go for a tender straight away while they're still there, still vertically integrated? What happens to the incumbents and the assets? So this presentation will consider approaches to managing what's called incumbent advantage in competitive tendering of local passenger transport, the lessons learned and good practices. Now, what exactly is this? What is the problem here? Well, incumbent advantage is about the learning and knowledge advantage that somebody who's already been operating there automatically has. New entrants in research in the United States has shown that new entrants tend to be more aggressive, but also you tend to lose them very, very quickly. Again, some more international evidence shows that. So you're in danger of losing these new entrants, and you're in danger of having more incumbents. Also, incumbents have lots of advantages to do with their sunk costs of the infrastructure they already operate. In public transport systems, that tends to be depots, vehicle fleets, and workforces. How does a new entrant compare with that, or compete with it when they have to actually obtain those resources? Also, when you are tendering, there's switching costs of going from one tenderer to another tenderer. And really, evidence in the United States in the cable TV industry shows that over 99% or so of the industry tends to keep with the existing suppliers because of switching costs. So you've got to consider these things. Now, is this an issue of the past or is it current? And the truth is that it's a very big problem and it's growing in experience. IOS has done some great work in this field, and between 2006 and 2016, last 10 years or so, pre-COVID, the number of public tenders with one bid has grown from 17% to 30%. We're in danger of losing competition if we're not careful. The average number of offers per tender has fallen from 5 to 3. There's evidence as well when we have large incumbents, such as in Germany, that the state monopolies have a very high share of the market. Is this competition, and do we need to manage that? And small and medium enterprises in Europe win only about 45% of contract value. So it's a very big problem. Also, I'm going to talk about the problem of the public sector, which I think is where the OECD is interested in this, where we have a large public sector operator, which we start with, and then we bring competitive regulation in. We have to ask this question of how we're going to manage them when we have private sector operators. But I think there's a bigger problem, because if you think about it, this large public sector operator context is a one-off to do at the beginning of introducing competition. A bigger problem and more continuous over time is when we've introduced a competitive regulation and then we need to keep it going. And every time we bring somebody in to run a contract, they have an incumbent advantage, and we need to manage that. I'm going to talk about both of these things. In my presentation, I'm going to structure it around, firstly, looking at the biggest issues here, which I think is not incumbent advantage. It's actually competitive regulation, getting that to work, understanding how that's going to work in the public transport industry, and recognizing that's the major concern that we have here, not just incumbent advantage. And then I'm going to talk about incumbent advantage, the flavor of that, the way that it works out. And I'm going to then go through and look at how we would manage this in the public sector context, and then in the private sector context, the more continuous one. And then I'm going to provide a whole series of conclusions about, in particular, the questions I was asked by the OECD and my answers to those. If you're interested in the work we do at the Public Transport Research Group, we have a website, ptrg.info. A lot of the information I provided before of the work we've done in this field is on there. We also run the free Researching Transit podcast series, which is on iTunes and all the other providers. And we also have a free research database called World Transit Research, where all the published research in the world is available on there on public transport systems. Thank you for your time, and I look forward to seeing you in June.